Good evening, everyone. Okay, are we going to have moon suits in time to beat China to the moon or not? We're going to do that duct tape thing like they did in For All Mankind. Someone is actually awake at the wheel at Axiom. We'll tell you what happened here soon. A couple of things about China. They want to deepen the commercial space sector. We're going to find out what that means. They also want to set commercial standards. For whom, I may ask. Trace Systems lands a $64 million military contract for comms. Lunar dust apparently can be transformed into structural reinforcement. Interesting. We looked into that. Astrobotics fires a new test engine in a spectacular demo. A Senate hearing split basically on party lines over the NASA budget cuts. We'll look at that. The Canadian government cancels a contract with Spire, one of our poster kids. Now, was it for cause or simply they don't have a budget? And Spaceport Australia and AXA Aerospace launch a joint venture, medical AI for space crews. All that, plus our guest, serial entrepreneur Dan Faber from the news desk at the Center for Space Commerce and Finance, Thomas Andrew Olson. And this is The Unknown Quantity. Okay, and as you know, this show is sponsored by the Center for Space Commerce and Finance. And what do? We champion and strengthen emerging space startups and space-adjacent enterprises worldwide through advisory, access, and advocacy. Our pitch events and world-class boot camps fortify startups to be better investor ready. And speaking of that, we're going to have a major announcement on the investor ready part of it coming up at the International Space Development Conference in June. So stay tuned for that if you're going. A lot of our work, especially this podcast, is supported by our listeners and fans like you. So just go to cscf.space/support and click that Plain as Day donate button, because a little on the tip jar each month makes a big difference. Don't forget to like and subscribe and tell your friends. Speaking of friends, my oldest space friend, who just got his green flag of the Fatimids from Amazon, is here with me. Michael, come on in, man.
Hey, how's things?
Okay. It's been a little weird today with comms, with different people, and it's going on all day, not just here. And
Right.
We'll we'll see how the rest of the night goes.
Fingers crossed.
I don't want to get caught off in the middle of a question. You know what I mean? That's always annoying. What's up with you? What's going
on? Good. Mom, I went to the doctor with mom again. She's doing fine, so that was good. It was a little bit spooky last week, but she's doing fine. Did her PT with us, so we did 5 miles this week, 2 on Monday and 3 more on Wednesday. So she's doing her PT. Everything's good. It's getting me out into the world. So yeah, it's all good. Yeah.
Good.
I did a pitch. I did a pitch for Liftport a couple days ago. Believe it or not, after all this time doing elevator stuff, I'll give like hour-long, half-hour lectures, go up on stage at ISDC, whatever. I'm super used to that. I'm not used to pitching. So it's new to me. I'm actually not great at it. It was a competition. There were 14 companies. We came in third, so happy about that. So just kind of refining that a little bit.
Good.
And I got a message about another project that we're working on that looks really fun. It's not a contract yet, so I'm not going to talk about it, but it looks really fun. So fingers crossed it turns into a contract.
Still happy to be a sounding board to all that when you're ready.
Yes, 100%. And believe me, you're going to be.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it. Happy to help. Oh, and hi, Veronica. I hope some other folks show up tonight.
Hey, all.
Okay, you ready?
Let's do it.
But the first one is just so weird. It's been out there for a few days, I just had to bring it in. It was a holdover from last time.
Yeah.
And I'm going, because, it just needs to be brought up. What is going on with the spacesuits? You want to beat China and the moon, and you don't have a spacesuit to do it with? And now they're saying it may not be ready on time. Who is making these things? And why is it taking so long? Here's the thing. During Apollo, the moon suits for Apollo were made by this specialized sewing company up in like New Hampshire or something.
Yeah.
They had old style, almost 19th century equipment. The women then were in their 70s, most of them sewing these things. And so I'm going, what is going on? How much fancier does it need to be? I mean, you think it's the 21st century. We're, 60 years down the road. And of course, we should have a lot of better stuff. And so, okay, well, then why can't we make it? Just make it.
It's stuff like this that gives us flat earthers and the folks that says we never went to the moon. It's stuff like this that gives them ammunition. It's so aggravating. And let's throw these punks under the bus. Axiom, with their super saturated board of folks with credentials and background from NASA, they were in the lead for space station work. And so along the way, they're like, hey, we should do spacesuits too. Diverted a giant portion of their workforce away from space stations to work on suits. And they're still, hundreds of millions of dollars and years over budget. Like, you guys are not supposed to mimic the industrial complex, right? You guys are supposed to not do what everybody else has been doing.
And they're coming up in a second. There's one ray of hope coming out of that. Because, we've talked about this before, the Axiom conundrum, when they charged a standard price to the Saudis, who would have paid $250 million per seat easily just to have the seat. They would have paid anything. They have piles of cash. They would have paid it. And then they fly them for 57 mil a seat, or 53 or whatever their standard rate was at the time. And then a year later or less, they're bitching they don't have enough money and they need to go raise again. You could have had $1 billion in your pocket, on one flight, and then you would have been sitting pretty for a while instead of having to go back to the well. And so, it's one of our favorite pundits out there, who shall remain nameless, would tell them, they shit the bed on that one, didn't they? Well, here's a case coming up here where they the next file where they actually
just pointing out from Dallas. He's like, remember, NASA's failed making a spacesuit for many years. Exactly. That's why we're in the mess in the first place. So it was supposed to be the commercial sector to the rescue, and instead it's the same as we've been.
He's absolutely right, because the thing was, like, they're basically, even on ISS now, they're basically using the same suit, more or less, with some modifications that Bruce McCandless wore when he was floating free in the 80s.
Right. Yeah.
This is what we're talking about. And some of it's so bad. One guy almost drowned in his own suit because he got a water leak during an EVA. I mean, my God, that would have been the worst thing ever.
That can't be good, right? All right, moving on. I'm frustration about this, but they should be doing better. Honestly, they should.
Yep, they should. But Axiom, that was the other thing. This is it, because they not only are they having these problems, but they're hiring the wrong people. Finally, somebody paid attention. They keep bringing in the H-1B guys, metaphorically speaking, and they've been just having this revolving door. And finally, they finally said, hey, after 6 months, this guy really isn't working. In a previous life, they would have kept him on for 2 years before they figured it out. I don't get it. I mean, if they're trying to check off a box, it's not working well for them. I hope they'll stop doing that and just do the work. And so maybe they pull this guy off, and now they're bringing in another old NASA guy, or they're bringing in somebody who actually, has some experience doing something. And so we'll see how that goes for them.
This quote in here by the new CEO, at first it sounds really cool. It says the next man and first woman to walk on the moon will be in an Axiom spacesuit, and we're building a commercial space station, what a mission, and a company. All right, so that sounds really cool on the surface if you just read it the way it is. But remember, what he's done here is he's inverted the priority. It used to be we're going to build space stations and, oh, yeah, by the way, spacesuits. And now he's inverted the priority. It's like we're going to build spacesuits. And if we get around to it, maybe perhaps someday, if we're really lucky, we get a space station. I'm frustrated by this whole thing. Like, great, good luck to y'all. I want you to succeed. I genuinely do, but it's hard to be on the sidelines to this one.
Right.
But it's so important.
It is. And we're going to keep watching these stories with great interest. Every time something new happens, we're going to be right here with you following up on that, because this is vaguely important.
Yes.
And they need to do that. Next thing up, there's a couple of things about China. Apparently, China has gotten the space commerce bug. And they're starting to put money into stuff, and they do two things. They say they're going to deepen, and this is well, they call it space4.com. It's really Space Daily. It's a set of Space Daily. Space Daily was offline for a while. They've come back, and here's the first thing I see: China moves to deepen commercial space sector with focus on in-space manufacturing, and they've brought together leaders from 14 commercial space company. What is it about the number 14 lately?
It's everywhere. Yeah,
it's everywhere.
That military contract a week ago, and
yeah. And so they're talking about development strategies, challenges, blah 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 blah. Of course, all these companies now have a party guy in their board. So I mean, I don't know how much flexibility and freedom they have to innovate and do certain things, but it seems to be they're trying hard, and so we'll see how that is. So basically, they're coming up with a competing ecosystem. That's how I read it.
Absolutely right, and in a way, that's exactly what they're doing, and good for them, right? That's better for everybody. I mean, how we measure free enterprise is a little bit different than how they measure free enterprise, but at the end of the day, that's 14 more companies sending folks cargo stuff, and that's good. I think that's good for the whole globalist ecosystem.
And as a kind of an annex to that, they're also starting to, and here's where it comes in. Here's where the party guys come in. They're setting their first commercial space standards. Now they say the aim is to cut cost and unify the industry,
right?
But I think it's a little bit more to it than that. Just saying.
How many guests have we had on the show that talks about Chinese lawfare? Setting standards is lawfare, right? And they're pulling our exact playbook, so good on them. It makes sense, but I'm a little curious what standards they are trying to set. I actually was a little fuzzy on that in this article.
They were too in the article. So I don't know.
We just had on our show the other day Dr. Mark Levinson about how standardizations transformed the shipping industry. Whomever gets those standards written and codified and accepted in the world has a leg up on everybody else. So, I wish we were doing it. I do. So, good on them.
Yeah. Okay, what else? Actually, there is one thing about money today. There's not a lot in the world of money today, even though we're at the crossroads of space and money. An outfit I haven't really heard of. They're probably because they're a military contractor. Trace Systems landed a $64 million Army contract for what they call Northcom deployable comms. I'm always interested in something involving comms, obviously, because of my day job. But I thought that was kind of interesting. They got a nice contract, and they're going to build some things. They want to sustain deployable communications capabilities for the Northern Command and the Western Hemisphere Command Forward. They have so many acronyms for so many things. But it's also part of the communications backbone that they rely on for disaster response, civil support missions, and coordination with partners. So they're going to be delivering all sorts of technical services.
Right on.
So that was a nice deal for them. Here is something I actually thought was really interesting. I didn't get a chance to read it.
It's relevant to us. Yeah.
This is they want to build. Of course, the challenge is always to build strong, durable infrastructure on the moon without transporting everything from Earth. And now we got some new research out of Rice University, our buddies. It points to a solution drawn from the lunar surface itself. They want to transform that abrasive dust that's everywhere into a valuable structural resource. And they did this study and they did some experiments, and they take that dust and they're incorporating it into a fiber reinforced polymer composite.
Love that.
To improve their structural performance. Maybe Dr. Doug needs to look into this.
Yeah. I love that. I don't know that much about this system or this company, so I'm not going to try to talk about something I don't know that much about. But I will point out that as this comes out of Rice, we once upon a time were pretty involved with Rice, and Dr. Smalley was one of the first folks in America to build out carbon nanotubes and start a whole department around nanotech, and especially carbon-based nanotech. And that materials piece that Rice picked off from Kennedy's speech 60 years ago is they are a powerhouse in materials technology. I don't feel like Rice gets enough credit for that, but that's a space worth paying attention to. So good on Rice, and good for this, because we need construction materials on the moon. Yeah, neat. It's neat stuff.
I don't know if it's me or it's you, Michael, but I'm losing you. I'm just you're just kind of slowed down.
Oh no!
Nothing.
I said something pithy and clever, and you don't need to worry about it.
Maybe it's just me.
All right. Are you there? I can hear you loud and clear. All right. I'm going to move on and hope you are with me, because I think I'm live and I think you're not. Sean is saying, our producer is saying both of us are fine. So Tom, just keep talking. We'll get through this.
Well, you keep, for some reason, you keep going in and out.
Okay.
And you slow down to nothing. And I see myself fine. I think Sean sees me.
Yep.
This is going to be
and
weird.
Veronica is telling us everybody is 5.
Now he's losing it.
Okay. All right. I'm just going to keep going. We've got
Senate
hearing largely split on
we'll just keep moving on, because that's how the show goes.
Right.
Okay. So it must just be me. You know what?
Yeah.
I tell you what. What if, here's what I'm going to do. Why don't you go to the next news item?
Okay.
About the Senate hearings.
Yeah.
I'm just going to leave completely and then come back again real quick and see if that happens.
All right.
Now I'm hearing you. Okay.
All right.
Be right back.
So I don't think anybody's going to be surprised by this headline. Senate hearing largely splits on party lines over proposed $5.6 billion NASA cut. I don't think anybody's surprised by that. This is exactly a replay of what we had last year. The Science Mission Directorate's potential cut of 50% would terminate 27 operating missions, cancel 26 missions in development, zero out the Office of STEM Engagement, and push science funding more than $1 billion below the 2007 levels. So inflation be damned. That's $1 billion below 20 years ago. So,
Yeah.
of course, people are pretty hot about that. I get that. I don't think we have it on this one, but Jerry Isaacman went to Congress and he actually defended the cuts in lockstep with the president's requests. So,
Well, so what does he know that we don't? There's got to be something going on because there's all this stuff they want
what
to
he
do,
knows
and he
is
wants to
it's
cut
like,
himself off and
do
shoot
you want
himself in the foot.
do you want the job? Toe the party line. Do you not want the job? Buck the system. I mean, I don't think that's very complicated.
Well, no, I'm not disagreeing on that. I'm saying, what else does he know? What else has somebody told him that he's not telling us? And there's going to be a source of cash coming from someplace else.
I don't think so. I would be surprised if they could get that same Hail Mary response that they got from last year. I would be surprised if Cruz steps in at the last minute with some renewed funding. Remember, the funding last year that got renewed went to the wrong place. It went to SLS, it went to Gateway, it went to all the missions that eventually got cut. So Isaacman is out there saying, look, NASA is going to the moon. Everything else does not matter. Everything else is deprioritized. Let's do this one thing and do it well and get boots on the moon before the next election cycle. And he's working really hard at that job. I'm not surprised by this. I do think it's a mistake. Please don't anybody, be pissed off at me about this. I do think it's a mistake. But if I was in Jared's seat, I might make the same call, right? I would ask for more money. I wouldn't just, abandon all of these other programs. But yeah, if your job depends on getting us to the moon, everything else is a distraction. And that sucks because it shouldn't be like that. But that's what it is, I think. Yeah.
Okay. We got a couple of minutes, but we've got only a couple of things left. So moving on.
Yeah.
I didn't know they even had this contract, but Spire, one of our poster kids, got a lovely contract with the Canadian government to do wildfire, imaging stuff. $72 million contract, and they just canceled it yesterday. Canadian government, they just canceled it outright, and they had some kind of what our buddy Mark Boucher wrote this, and they said they were terminating it for convenience. But they couldn't even give him a hard reason. I have no idea what that means, and no one else does either. And that's why they use those weasel words, I guess. With the thing, because because there's no way to tell from this whether Spire missed some milestones and pissed everybody off, or the Canadian government just ran out of money, didn't have the cash to pay them.
Sean in the background is saying they put out all the fires. We don't need any more because we don't have any more fires. That's great. That's terrific. That's terrific.
Oh, you got to save some money somewhere, eh?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Hey, I like that. Hey. I'm gonna make a bet that I don't know if we'll ever learn this, but I would make a bet that we've talked so many times about sovereignty.
Yep.
I bet you it's a sovereignty play. I bet you they've got somebody in Canada that is, an entire carpet of forest up there. And they were like, well, we could probably do fire monitoring. We probably could do that in-house, like in country. We might not know it for a couple of years, but I'm just going to put my bet on sovereignty since there isn't another better explanation. But we don't have any more information. It's just a guess on our part.
Yeah.
Joe Luttrell, totally great point. The government should just buy data and not the satellites, right?
Okay, but that's what I thought they were doing. I thought they were hiring out to Spire with their own satellites to do the work for them, and they were just buying the data for $72 million. So I don't know. I guess they're not going to have a wildfire season this year or something.
Yeah. I guess
okay.
completely safe. Completely safe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Canada is fine.
Okay.
All right. Looks like our technical issues are over. So good to see you back there, Sean. All right.
Okay. Okay. Last thing. Business News Australia. Moray-based Spaceport Australia and Houston-based AXA Aerospace have formalized a joint venture to develop what they describe as the world's first deductive medical AI designed to assist, support, and treat spacecraft and station crew. That should be a very interesting thing. They called it the Hamilton Project, and it's named after, I guess, a well-known flight surgeon, Dr. Douglas Hamilton, who served across 50 missions. And so they want an AI model capable of functioning as a medical resource for crew operating in environments where real on Earth is limited or impossible. So I guess a little bit of latency may not be as bad as most people think might, because they're still not doing emergency situations. Somebody just had a brain hemorrhage. What are you going to do? Oh, let's talk to the AI. No,
Right.
I'm not going to do that anyway. So
Right. That's great. I love it. We're starting to pay a lot more attention to the Australian space program because of our friends down there. It's neat. I like it.
yeah, remember Jason Held said it's all his fault.
Yeah, absolutely. I do. Thanks, buddy. Dr. Held, appreciate it. Right on.
And speaking of Australians, are you ready for our guest?
We are.
Okay.
I'm going to put, while we bring him on, there's a couple big reports that got launched this week. I'm just going to put them in the chat. We're not going to talk about them, but they are worth looking at. The Space Frontier Foundation came up with a report that says, no surprise, the launch vehicle system that we have with SLS is not sustainable. No surprise from them. There's a good report from the Space Industrial Base set of meetings that came out of New Space Nexus, posting that one. And there's a really spooky one about nukes in space and what happens if we launch one of the light one of those off. We're looking at you, Russia. So that one's worth looking up. And the Space Capital folks have released their quarterly report, which is always a good read. So, enough of that. Move on.
But speaking of quarterlies, I just want to mention, though, I'm going to put the link up. We'll do it next week if it's necessary, because we were talking about guys developing an AI for all this stuff. I hope they're not they're rethinking using OpenAI for their stuff, because they didn't make any of their projections for first quarter yesterday. They did a quarterly report, and they're in serious doo-doo right now over all of it. In fact, even their own CFO say, I don't know if we got a 1.5 trillion in obligations, so we don't know if we can make them. And so
how bad would it be to be the folks who literally built an entire globalist industry and then not be the ones to reap the rewards because everybody else is eating your lunch? That's gotta suck. That's gotta suck.
It does. It does. Yeah. It's not always good to be first. And it's happened many times before. You're right, Sean.
Right. Yep.
Okay, shall we bring in our guest? Let us bring in our guest.
And a friend of mine from whoever says my link didn't work, I'll go find it. I realize I'm in.
Okay. Well, at this point, let us bring in our guest tonight, serial entrepreneur Dan Faber, dear friend. I've known him for 15 years or something. I've known you. Didn't we meet in South Africa? But he's just late of Orbit Fab. He's done a lot of interesting things, and I've been trying to get him on this show forever, and he's joining us for the first time. He just left Orbit Fab, which he founded, and he went out on a vision quest for about 4 or 5 weeks, and now he's back, and to hopefully give us all a hint of what his next challenge will be. Dan, come on in.
Hey, Tom, how's it going?
Hey.
Good to see you, Mike.
Yeah. Yeah, my favorite Tasmanian. How you doing, man?
Yeah, doing well. Been relaxing a little. I took the motorbike out, went for a drive for a week, and was chilling. Thought I'd take a year off or something, but I got bored after a week. So
Yeah.
now I'm back.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, I want to get you on here because you have a very interesting existence. You've done a lot of different interesting things, and I wanted our viewers to get to know you a little bit. So why don't we just lead off with a very quick, 1-2 minute bio? Just show me where you came from. What's your origin story? How did you get to be Daniel Faber, just recently of Orbit Fab? Go.
Well, I was born to Daniel Faber, but to become recently of Orbit Fab was a bit longer story.
Yeah.
Grew up on a farm in Tasmania. Engineer father, chemist mother. Probably always doomed to do something nerdy. Got my degree in Sydney and decided that I wanted to work on something that was going to be useful for the world and useful for humanity. Getting humans off Earth, getting life off Earth is probably the most significant thing since we crawled out of the ocean. So why work on anything else?
Mhm.
So wrote down a list of industries that could pay for the first permanent jobs in space without a profit incentive. It's going to be very, very slow. It was a pretty short list, so I've been chipping away at everything related to asteroid mining because I couldn't see space-based solar power working out back then, and I couldn't see myself as a tour operator. And that's all I could think of. I've added a couple of things, but that's sort of it. So, I built a dozen satellites in different parts of the world. Back then, before Jason Held was in Australia, I used to know all 6 people in the Australian space industry. And there was bipartisan political support for never having a space agency until Rocket Lab launched a rocket and the New Zealanders embarrassed us. Within a year, there was a space agency in Australia. But yeah, 25 years ago, I decided that's it. I've got to get around the world. I've got to find places and people that are doing this. So I built about a dozen satellites, bunch of interesting things, and then started building companies because I had that bug for just trying to create something. I didn't think people were working on the most important problems. So did a few things. Instrumentation for the mining industry, the actual terrestrial mining industry, high-speed internet for Antarctica. We built the first Ka-band transponders for CubeSats and nanosats. Then to Deep Space Industries, a wannabe asteroid mining company. We built thrusters that could move satellites around in orbit that ran off the materials you can one day get out of an asteroid, so water, hydrocarbons, hydrogen peroxide. And then Orbit Fab started creating that market for propellant in orbit. We realized that the marginal value of an extra kilo of fuel in orbit is typically about $1 million per kilo. So seemed crazy that no one was doing it. I asked a lot of questions, realized that, hey, this is a real opportunity and there's real reasons why no one else can do it. But those aren't universal reasons. They're just everyone else is busy. And so dived into that, built Orbit Fab, built the standard gas cap for satellites, changed the paradigm. So everyone's now realizing that the future of spacecraft is high mobility and refuelability. It's going to enable satellite servicing. So that's been pretty good. We just hired somebody as a new CEO there to take the company to the next level and get it to IPO and the like. And I'm going back to doing the 0 to 1 stuff that I really enjoy. So
Yeah.
I've been looking at a few different things.
Right. And so does the gas cap have that little thing that clicks when you turn it so you know it's on tight?
It's got a lot of things that make sure that it's on tight.
I couldn't resist shit like this. I just can't resist.
I want to sneak in. You snuck in something I hadn't heard yet, but you said a new CEO to prep for an IPO. Is that real? Is that an announcement or is that a slip? Sorry, but I guess got to ask you that question.
No, that's an assessment of where Orbit Fab is at. That's now I can say that's my personal assessment and not necessarily a strategy of the company, right?
Okay.
But things that went into the decision. We just got a round of funding. I was talking to the investor about what's needed for the future of the company, right? Where are we going to be for the next fundraise? What is the next fundraise? Is it IPO? Is it private equity? Is it a bigger VC round? And what has to be true, right? What are the milestones we have to hit?
Mm-hmm.
And the conclusion we came to was those investors are looking for something different in the management of the company, right? It's about what we achieve and who is there and everything else. And so if we want to bring somebody on, the best time to do it is right now. Give them the maximum amount of time to build the relationships with the finance community, get the wins under their own belt, so that they're in the strongest position to be able to make that next fundraising successful, whatever it is. I use IPO as shorthand for the next fundraising, but it looks very different because the company is now scaling.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, reading between the lines on that, I gather you're the guy who brought this company from 0 to 1.
Yeah.
But the next funding round is supposed to take you on. Congratulations. The next funding round is supposed to take it. You want to take it. The next guy will take it from 1 to 10. And so I am, as you said. And so I guess I'm concluding that you haven't found that guy yet, or girl.
It has not been announced, though people in the company know what's happening and know who it is. So
Okay.
watch
So
this
you have
space.
somebody. Good.
Right.
Okay.
All right. Well, then, what do you look for? I'm not putting my hat in the ring, right? Just saying. But I mean, what does that look like? Let's give some perspective here, because out of 100 episodes, you're actually the first one in this exact spot at this exact moment, right? So, how much total have you raised? Just kind of a spectrum to understand the scope. And then what does that next raise look like?
So we raised 60 million.
Okay.
And the next raise to deploy the full operational infrastructure and be able to meet the demand that we see, and just from US Space Force, it's going to take a few $100 million just for the baseline infrastructure. And then depending on demand, that scales considerably. So it's somewhere between a few $100 million and a couple of billion that needs to be raised in capital over the next 5-10 years.
Okay, great. That's fantastic. Good for y'all, right? Good for y'all.
And the job of the CEO is threefold. You ask, what does that look like, right? We need someone who can do the three jobs of the CEO. You got to make sure that everybody's on line with the vision, that it's well communicated, that the narrative is clear, and people know what they're doing and how that relates to where the company's going. You got to make sure that you got the right people at the top and running the company, and you got to make sure that it's well capitalized. People have got the resources to do the job. That's the only three things the CEO does. And so as the company goes from 1 to 1,000, right? That's a different scale. It's a different level of relationships, different types of investors that are coming in to support the finance side. It's a different team that manages a company that's at a different scale. And with that different size of team and different stakeholders, you've got different communications processes that need to be brought in. So I had to make a personal decision. Do I want to learn that new job? And the job of CEO always changes. You succeed today, the job tomorrow is different, right? But do I want to learn that? Or do I want to do what I really enjoy? Get something off the ground, and that's the decision I make. So I'm pretty happy, to be honest.
Good for you. Good for the team. I've said this lots of times. I take on the role of chief strategic officer and president, but I've always left the CEO and COO roles empty because I know that I'm terrible at them, and I'm just waiting for the person to fill that spot because I'm not good at it. And I know that I will be replaced on this project because I don't have the skill to move us all the way through completion. So it's really actually very nice to hear that you're in the same boat. You're like, I don't want to do that. That's not what I'm good at. That's not what my, that drives me. So really, it's kind of nice to hear that. So thanks. Just personally, that's a useful piece of intel. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Yep, I get it. I have a lot of respect for people that have that self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, I want to get a little further into your post orbit fab life, but you've done so many other things. I wanted to touch really briefly on your other experiences, and one of which was with Deep Space Industries. That was a thing that went for a while. I love to get your insights on that. You were there 5 years, and
yeah, I was there for a few years. So I learned about Deep Space Industries. This was after Planetary Resources had announced that they were going to do asteroid mining. Yep. And so there are a lot of us who'd been thinking about it for years and kind of knew each other. And so we're discussing the plans they had, the announcements they'd made. And I was actually at a small conference in the Isle of Man when Rick Tomlinson, I was telling him how I would do it, a very small spacecraft to bootstrap it. He wrote an NDA on a napkin and slid it across the bar. And I signed the napkin, and then he read me in. A week later, I was chief spacecraft designer, and that's how I got involved in deep space industries. With a year or two earlier, I published a paper at the IAC on some of the risks inherent in an asteroid mining business, right? Trying to look at other mining industry paradigm shifts and what had facilitated them and what it might take. And so I co-authored that with a couple of people that ended up being in deep space industries. It was, like I said, small community, but we'd come to the conclusion: mine the volatiles, sell the fuel. It's worth about 2 or 3 orders of magnitude more than the metals or the platinum. And so that was the thesis. And the initial business model was bag a billionaire. And it didn't work. We didn't get a billionaire. So there were a dozen of us that had sort of co-founded the company, and none of us were able to find a billionaire. But we found some angel investment money. And so I actually moved to the US at that point, and after a few months, just asked whether everyone would mind if I had a go running the company and bringing in a technology strategy. And so while asteroid mining was still the big, hairy, audacious goal, the strategy was to build the thrusters, build thrusters that ran on material you could get out of an asteroid, but focused it on launching everything from the ground, launch the propellant from the ground, and nail a gap in the market, which was fairly obvious. There are a lot of small satellites starting to be built, and there was no thruster for them. And so we built that, and it was a steam kettle, right? We superheated water and pumped it out the back, and it was so boring. No propulsion engineer in the right mind would want to work on it, and every systems engineer wanted to buy it because it was boring and it was going to work.
Right. Nice.
And we leveraged that to become the prime contractor for the Hawkeye 360 first generation spacecraft. So first we built propulsion systems, then we became a satellite integrator.
Yes.
And the strategy was to then start hosting payloads. So if you see the business model of Leap Space, it's hosting payloads as sort of a condo sat. Our goal was then to have those payloads changed in and out, so you have a sustained platform on orbit, at which point refueling makes sense. And nobody cares how we operate the satellite. So we don't have to disrupt everybody by making them buy this material in orbit that we've produced. We use the material in orbit. We become our own customers. And our customers are the transponder owners, the telescope owners, the demo payload owners, who just want to put their payload onto a platform in orbit and have it do a mission. So in that way, don't disrupt the customer, disrupt the competition. If you're going to disrupt the customer, become the customer, and then you're not disrupting your customer. Your customer moves further downstream. So that was the strategy. It was going to be a 10 or 20 year vision, and we executed the first few steps of that quite successfully. Also built hydrogen peroxide, propane thrusters, so much higher thrust, much higher ISP thrusters as well. When the company was purchased by Bradford Space, they purchased it for the thruster tech, and the Comet thruster is still being made and sold. But unfortunately, they shut down the hydrocarbon peroxide thruster because it was a direct competition with ECAPs. Now they've divested themselves of ECAPs. That didn't get picked up in the market, and they're probably regretting they didn't keep the peroxide hydrocarbon thrusters. But decisions were made.
Right.
Okay. So that's basically the legacy of that experience then, as those thrusters and
That's right.
And the IP. Yeah.
Well, that Hawkeye 360 piece is interesting because those guys have gone on to do some really great things. So
yeah,
that's a piece I wasn't aware of. That's really quite interesting. Good.
Yeah,
good
when I
for
first heard that business model of Hawkeye 360, I kicked myself that I hadn't thought about it. That was just brilliant. And then, the opportunity came up to bid on building their spacecraft, and we nailed it.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, well, let's talk about Orbit Fab and kind of dig into a bit. And we have about 15 minutes, and we'll still do the 5 minutes of the future, 5 years and 25 years. So we got about 10-ish minutes here. Let's talk about Orbit Fab and the earliest days, because what I remember that y'all executed so well on was just come up with an idea, get a bag launched, and do it fast. It doesn't have to be great. It doesn't have to be amazing. It doesn't have to be 15 years and $1 billion of research and development. We can actually just put a fuel bag in space quickly. Can you just tell that bit of the story? Because I don't think you'd be sitting here with $60 million in the checking account had you not done that piece. That's my assessment.
Yeah,
Where do you agree?
That's absolutely right. There's some really good stuff on startups by Steve Blank. I think the definition of a startup is a temporary organization in search of a scalable business model. And success can then be measured on how quickly you test business ideas and product ideas. And you have to go very, very quickly.
Yeah.
Because if you can test 5 ideas in a week and someone else is only testing 2, you'll beat them. But if someone else is testing 50, you lose. How quickly can you test business ideas? What does that mean in that context, right? It's easy in software. I can do A/B testing online. I've got this constant churn. What does it mean for a space hardware company where launch happens so infrequently? And so we started the company saying we're going to go faster than everybody has. We've got a team here that understands the industry. We know the cracks are. We know what leverage we can exploit. We know when, the spacecraft we got when we flew the first free-flying spacecraft, it had been sold twice and returned to the vendor because those companies hadn't got their payloads ready on time. So we got a screaming deal on that spacecraft. That's the kind of things we found. So the first flights, I actually went to the investors and said, I want to get $500,000 because I've got this idea and I think that refueling satellites is a huge opportunity. I think there are structural reasons in all these other companies that they can't do it. They're too busy, right? They're owned by Lockheed and Boeing or something like that. I think it's a huge opportunity. We need to go and test this market and really be sure that this works. Give me $500,000, we'll test it. And they weren't that interested. And then I was mentioning the ISS National Lab had said they'd give us a free flight to the space station because one of these issues with the industry, their CEO had been fired because they weren't doing any commercialization, right? They're supposed to do commercialization and science on space station.
Right.
So they kicked out the CEO. And NASA, of course, was seeing an organization parallel funded by Congress and didn't want their budget to grow at the expense of NASA. They were leaning on trying to kill it. And they were the ones doing the review. So
Right.
the ISS National Lab guys were desperate for commercialization story and just said, we'll give you all the upmass and all the astronaut time. My gut reaction was, that's terrible. I don't want to put my highly aggressive propellants in a space station. I don't want to put astronauts at risk, especially as I'm doing R&D. I've got to take risks. This is a startup company. But they were insistent. And the VC, one of the VCs I talked to said, how much would it cost you to put something together? And I'm like, well, look, I could pump some water back and forth. We can learn about the pumps. We can learn about a couple of different systems. We can try some stuff out. $250,000, right? And he's like, well, I'll fund that. And that was it. So we then had I think it was June 10th, we got the funding from the investor. And a few days earlier, I'd got the letter from ISS National Lab saying, yep, we're going to back your flight. And we had a napkin sketch of what we're going to build. And there was a flight in November. And of course, they need the hardware 2 months in advance. So we had 4 months to build it.
Right.
And we told NASA what we were doing. We're going to pump water back and forth. And they freak out a little because you can drown an astronaut in a gallon of water. Tom mentioned that they had a leaking spacesuit once, right? Terrifying. But even inside the space station, you can't wipe the water away. Like, it doesn't drain. It just loops back thanks to surface tension. And so this is a catastrophic level hazard. You've got to be very careful about these things. And so they were ready to throw the book at us. And then we told them, like, after we've pumped the water back and forth, we're going to pump it into the space station so you can drink it because we're a supply company. And that freaked them out because we're actively pumping into the water bus on space station. And if it springs a leak everywhere, then they've got a damp space station. I mean, you're evacuating it. That's a bad day. So they threw the book at us like, okay, this is going to take you 2 years. And we're like, no. We're doing it in 4 months. There's a launch coming up.
Right.
And so we had to make friends with everybody. We had to really understand what they were worried about and why, and convince them that while we may not have followed the book, we've made it safe. And the NASA folks are actually really good. They worked with us quite well. And every time they didn't, we talked to ISS National Lab, who would then say, oh, look, it's NASA's fault that we can't do commercialization. And NASA would try and get out of the way so that it wasn't their fault. It was this great virtuous circle that we ended up in, where everybody was collaborating to get this thing done quite quickly. So we were able to ship that hardware. I think it took us 4.5 months. but it broke a few records of getting hardware together to fly to orbit.
I am dumbstruck by this story because I had Justin Kugler on the inside track over there, actively helping me to work on six different proposals, all of which were vetoed because of the problems you just described. So you got in after I submitted my proposals, and it was a completely different experience for you than it was for me. So good for
And
you.
I don't know that it would be again if we did it now.
Right? Yeah.
Everything changed. Everything always changes, right?
Yeah,
So it was a fortunate time and a fortunate set of circumstances. A great team. Shout out to James Boltitude, who's now running his own company, etc. Really knew how to work with the ISS National Lab guys. He'd done a couple of payloads before. Having those people really helped. Like, just a lot of things fell into place, and it was a lot of pushing. I mean, they did send us an email on at 5 p.m. Houston time on a Friday night, 4 days before we were delivering the hardware, and told us, we see your paperwork coming into the system, but we can't process it quickly enough, so we're going to pull you off the launch and put it on the next one. We went ballistic. We got the whole payload manifest team on the phone on 10 a.m. Saturday on a long weekend, argued our way back onto the launch, pulled a 72-hour weekend. We didn't sleep that weekend, got on a plane, flew with the hardware to Houston and handed it over. That's the kind of thing that it took. And it flew. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so happy for you.
That is one of a dozen stories of what it takes to get hardware on the pad quickly. Yeah.
Good for you.
That's absolutely insane.
And it didn't stop there. Of course, we then we'd done something that didn't get us a huge amount of engineering. There are a few things that we got out of that. Mostly it was just the fact we got the legs under us. We got some PR. Right. It was really useful for that. We did test the pumps and what have you. But it wasn't really that. Definitely wasn't a build to print to then say we've got a refueling system. We had to build a free flying fuel depot and what have you. So that helped us get the seed funding. And it was a week or so after we'd finally closed the seed funding, and of course I'm like, okay, I can have a breath, I can have a big long break, I could at least stop for lunch, and then we're into it again. But I was talking to a friend working at one of the launch brokers, and convinced him to sell me a launch for 1/3 of the price because it was 6 months away, and no one had bought it yet. I then, like I mentioned before, managed to get a bus that had been sold a couple of times and returned to the vendor for about 1/3 of the price. We let some other payloads on there, and that helped. We then went and played a game of Stone Soup and said, look, I've got a launch, but it'd really be good if it had a thruster. And we found some folks that had sold a couple of thrusters, but had all the spare parts to build a third. And so we paid for those parts, and they assembled it for us. We got one of the satellite servicing companies that was looking to do inspection. We got them to pay for the cameras we wanted to put on there, so they could then say they've got their cameras flying. Mm-hmm. We had a whole bunch of stuff like that, and so we signed up to this launch 6 months after we closed our seed round, knowing that it was going to take us 7 months to build a spacecraft. Really? Oh, and there was a pandemic going on. Did I mention that?
Oh yes. Other than that, yeah,
that's right. Yeah. So we had inside intel that told us that the launch was going to slip by a month and a half. And we were relying on that. But the launch broker had sold us this flight and carefully crafted the contract. We weren't actually manifested on the flight. They were banking on somebody else not making it and having to change them out. So we weren't manifested on the flight until 2 months before it flew.
Oh my God.
Which was 6 months after we started the project. The launch slipped 2 months. Our program slipped, a month and a half or something. Like, we ended up winning the game of launch chicken by about 2 weeks. And thankfully, someone else dropped off. And that's what it took to get that first fuel depot into orbit. Jesus. And it didn't perform perfectly in orbit. Okay, right. We then had flight heritage on the first version of the Rafty gas cap. So we then talked to all the national labs, to the Space Force and what have you, and said, hey, put this on everything. It's TR09 now. Mm-hmm. And the resounding response was, hell no, never. Right. That thing sucks. Which is just what you want to hear. It was actually just what you want to hear. They sat down and said, here is a long list of reasons why you suck. With it? Yep. We got product requirements. For less than $1 million in about 8 months, we got product requirements, so we knew exactly what we had to design to, and we'd already started shifting that paradigm because now people had thought through it. Before, when we'd asked, they'd gone, "Oh, just tell us what you've got. We don't know we don't know how that would work."
Right.
And then all of a sudden, they're forced to sit down and say, "Well, we have thought it through, and here's why your thing is so terrible."
Amazing. That's so good. That's so good.
With hydrogen peroxide, which at high off, it's not toxic or carcinogenic, just kaboomable. And so we knew what was wrong with it.
Yep.
We'd already fixed most of it. So 2 months after we got their requirement, we turned around and said, "Well, here's your design. Thank you so much for telling us how to do this." And they were shocked because they thought the requirements were contradictory. They didn't think anyone could do it. And there was their design. We turned the critics into champions, and that's what made the company. Then we had to pivot from taking all this risk. I mean, the number of things that could have gone wrong. If we'd have made something NASA wasn't happy with at the ISS stuff, we would have just had to start from the beginning, right? All that risk was on us.
Yep.
If we'd have not got this thing to the pad, like so many reasons that might not have got on the launch, that would have been on the company, and we probably wouldn't have raised the next round of funding and would have died. Okay, but we stitched that together by taking that risk because we could. We didn't have a brand at risk. We don't have. And we're not Boeing or Lockheed, who for whom a failure they've got to explain it to Congress, kind of thing. So we could take that risk. That's the advantage of a startup. But then we were getting government customers, and they want high reliability. Like they want to put this on Class A missions, and all of a sudden we need a different engineering culture. We need a different production culture.
Yeah.
We had to change the core of the company to be something very different. And that gymnastics, holding those contradictory things in your head, that was a fascinating experience to go through. And we did it, right? Now we've got the Rafty port is approved by Space Force to go on some of the most sensitive missions. So that's the kind of journey that we went through. And some of the exciting things at the start, you end up with different and just as exciting things, but very different things as it matures.
Amazing. I want to. We gotta switch time. We're kind of watching the clock here. We only have 4 more minutes.
Michael.
Yeah.
Michael, here's what I want to do. I know we want to go into the 525 here in a second.
Yep.
But before that, I got a quick minute. So you've made this journey, and you've gone out on your motorcycle ride and done your vision quest and everything. So can you tease us even what's next for Dan Faber? What's your next 0 to 1?
Well, there are a few things that I've been looking at while Orbit Fab was building, things that are enabled by what Orbit Fab's doing. So there's a bit of a tease, because skate to where the puck's going, right? What is the space industry going to look like in a few years? And so all I'll say is that the company's called Bent Pipe. We're all on a bender, and it's a communications play, and that's all I'm saying right now.
Okay. Very good. And so again, let's move on now. So we're in that part of the show before we end. Your view, what does this industry look like 5 years from now? And what does it look like 25 years from now?
Gosh, so many things have been changing. In 5 years, launch prices will start going down again instead of going up. There'll actually be competition to SpaceX, at least at some level. And there'll be some response in pricing. And so all those investments that were made 3-4 years ago that are now starting to pay off in flights, they'll actually be able to get them to orbit, which is starting to be a challenge right now. And so it's the maturation, the actual realization of value creation from all the things that got invested in a few years ago that are getting demoed right now, that are going to be rolled out. That's pretty exciting because there's some great tech on satellite servicing. There's some great tech on manufacturing and orbit, the pharma stuff. I think there's a lot of potential that we might have some new exports from space, not just telecoms and remote sensing. I'm looking forward to those finding their legs and seeing which of those make real businesses. So 10 years, those ones are going to be successful. Everyone's going to double down and pile in on the new business lines that people have realized can make money. And whether it's pharma, whether it's space-based solar pad, data centers that people are looking at, these things will follow the ups and downs of the investment cycle. But in those time frames, some of those investments are going to pay off and pay off big.
Yeah, and an old Seppo like me got to see it. Okay, I guess, well, on that, Dan Faber, my God, serial entrepreneur, dear friend, Renaissance man. It's always a thrill to see you anywhere and anyway. And we're going to be seeing each other again real soon now in about a month at the ISDC.
Looking forward to it.
You got some stuff you're doing. You're going to be on one of my panels. It's going to be an amazing, amazing time. And I'm looking forward to seeing you there and have the kind of weird tomfoolery and fun that we usually have when we get together in one place.
Don't know what you're talking about. Always good to see you, Tom. Great to see you, Michael.
With us. So that'll really be a trio from hell. Oh my God. Okay. Thanks so much for being here. And let's see, who do we have on Monday? We have our new guest will be a financial manager named Caden Meek from Lifetime Financial Growth. And he's going to give us what he calls an outside perspective of what he sees in the industry. So obviously he's not involved in it directly, but he's been digging in and he has some perspectives, and we're going to hear that. That'll be next Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern. So for Michael Wayne and Sean Key, I still remain Thomas Andrew Olson. Keep watching the skies.